Welcome to Evangelical-ish, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of the American Evangelical Church, deconstruction, faith, and God's love through it all. Join us for these episodes live on our Evangelical-ish YouTube page on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 o'clock Pacific. Let's journey together. Well, good evening. Welcome to Evangelical-ish. I'm April.
And I'm Jeremy.
And I hate this view, so I'm going to change it.
There
We are sans Paul tonight because he's a busy guy and he needed a week off, and that is completely understandable. So we will miss him, but Jeremy and I are going to hold down the fort, and we've got a really fun guest tonight. She is on TikTok at Kelly Ross Krout, I think.
Yeah. That's correct. Yeah.
So before I bring her on, she is backstage in our little digital no man's land space. I'm going to intro her with a TikTok. So she ran for office in Arkansas, and there was this Republican flyer from their local Republicans that went around, and it included her, and it's pretty great. So I am going to play this video, and we'll be right back.
Went really next level today. Very excited about it. Want to share it with you. But listen, if you're easily spooked, might want to keep scrolling. If there's kids around, avert their eyes. This is very scary. This may have appeared in your mailbox today, and it looks like I'm rising straight out of hell. Now listen, Beto came to the U of A last year, which is cool because national campaigns never come to Arkansas, and I said on Twitter, thanks for coming to Arkansas. Now listen, on the back, it's really spooky. Look at these characters. We got Vice President Biden, Senator Harris, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and me. Oh my gosh, that is so sweet. Warning! I've been meaning to talk to y'all about my far left agenda. I'm sorry that I left it out. It's like funding education and making sure people have access to healthcare during a pandemic. I'm sorry if that was not super transparent. But for real, not a good look. Not a good look. Just for funsies, here's my husband reacting. It's so great.
That is amazing. I can't scroll down to add her. Oh my gosh. Okay. Kelly, welcome.
Hey, Kelly.
I love Kevin reacting to that so much.
It's seriously so funny. I think my life would be made if I was put on like a hellish, evil looking flyer like that with those big names too. You made the big time.
Yeah, I mean, you were definitely up there with some heavy hitters. By the way, somebody asked in the chat, not to derail us too far, but Justin asked, April has never missed an episode, right? Is that correct? Do you have perfect attendance, April?
I do have perfect attendance.
Is that right?
I'm a straight A student. Hey, yeah, I've never missed.
That's wild.
I've never had a good enough reason to miss, and I enjoy it a lot. So I'm like, why would I miss if I don't have to?
No, it's a blast. The only times I've ever missed it have been like necessity, like traveling with family or work or whatever. But that's pretty awesome. I hadn't even thought about that. But
I know. I feel like a goody two shoes with perfect attendance. It's like totally not cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just have to ask, Kelly, it seems a little bit kind of wild that I loved your line in there that it was like, oh, I forgot to tell you about my radical left agenda, or this progressive agenda about like basic health care and stuff like that. Like it was all very it was very, very radical and common sense. But I mean, that is what it is like, being from Oklahoma, and well, I guess all of us here in the South, like Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, we get that like demonization, right, of anything that comes from the left.
Very, very quickly. Yeah. If your platform is not pro-life, pro-family, like splattered all over it, I mean, clearly you're straight from the devil. I mean, Satan's spawn over here. So
obviously, Kelly, tell us a little bit for those of us who don't know, like your campaign, what you ran on, or the office that you ran for, and just a little bit about you, and then we'll ask you some more specific questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks for having me. This is definitely the Cool Kid Club. I'm super honored to be invited. My name is Kelly Krout, and I recently ran for office in Northwest Arkansas. I ran for state representative in my district. I did not win, but we ran a heck of a campaign and had a really good time. and we made some waves. My biggest flex is that people tell me all the time, "You're the first Democrat I've ever voted for," and that's
so great.
because we had important conversations that people cared about. Oh, I see some people that know me in the chat. This is so fun. So a little bit about me, though. I'm a stay-at-home mom currently. I'm also a graduate student, and I have a very conservative background, as this show implies. Now, I always want to give my parents like major credit. I was not raised in a super conservative household. I was raised by a pretty moderate dad and a fairly liberal mom, but they raised us to think for ourselves. And so when I became involved with a group as a teenager that were just super, super conservative, involved in this super conservative church, I just sort of did my own thing. And it was different than what my family was doing. And so I'm sure it was kind of hard for them to watch, but they're like, she'll figure it out. And they put up with a lot of my snotty judginess for quite some time. But I met my husband shortly after I graduated high school, and we were set up on a blind date, and we got married really, really young. I wanted to have kids just right away, which we did. I was so conservative that for just a hot minute, we thought birth control was sinful. Okay, so if you counted my kids, you're probably like,
those people.
Yeah, that checks out. But we did stop that after a minute because I'm shockingly fertile, it appears. Anyway, we ended up getting... I'm sorry if that's offensive in any capacity, but it's just the facts are facts. So we ended up doing foster care. That was something we both wanted to do. And we were like, wait, we can't actually do this no birth control thing and also take in children that don't belong to us because numbers. And so we started doing foster care and really enjoyed that, and getting to help families and getting to reunite families. And that was sort of just a big part of who we were for probably 7 or 8, 10 years. We took a couple breaks as we adopted a couple of kids. And anyway, I was not a super, super political person. I was not really impacted by politics. I didn't think. I see now the privilege in that politics were not impacting my daily life that I was aware of. But during some of that time, somebody really close to me came out as gay, and my belief system taught me that was wrong. And so thinking I was doing the most loving thing, loving this person so much, I just really wanted better for them, because that's what I had been taught. And it was a rough season for everyone involved as we tried to kind of work this out. And thankfully the person has been incredibly gracious to me as I have learned and grown and realized, oh, wow, the Bible actually doesn't say at all what I thought it did about homosexuality. And I won't go into that whole thing. There's a million creators that are covering that. But what it struck for me, the catalyst it was, oh, wow, if I was wrong about this thing that I thought I was so sure about, what else am I wrong about? So I was deconstructing before I knew deconstructing was a thing.
I
was like, I'm just going to tear apart everything that I think I know I'm right on and just make sure that I am. And you know what? Most of the time I was actually not. I don't find myself right anymore or where I was. And so over about a 5 or 10 year process, I just gradually moved further and further to the left. My husband sort of did this with me because we were just bouncing ideas off of each other all the time. Like, oh, I listened to this different person today who's not like me and is not like the same pastors I've been listening to my whole life. And now I've really been challenged. What do you think about this? And we dig into it. And so I'm thankful that we kind of walked through that process together. So I had been through that. It was a pretty personal process for me. So, like my general friends didn't know what was, acquaintances didn't necessarily know I was changing my whole belief system unless we were really tight. And then I noticed, oh my gosh, no one's running for state representative as a Democrat. I'll do it if no one's going to do it, because that's just kind of how I roll. I just try to jump in where I'm needed if I think. And so it was kind of a shock to my little community to run as a Democrat because I go to church. And so I must not be a Democrat, right? And so
you're obviously a Republican.
Right. And that was the assumption. And so, several people were like, Democrat, no thanks, and hung up and did not speak to me again. And so it was kind of bizarre. I overly assumed that people who knew and trusted me before would still trust me and be willing to converse with me. And it turns out it can be quite the barrier.
Yeah. So, was there a specific moment where you realized, shoot, I'm not a Republican anymore? Like, do you remember the moment where you're like, I'm a Democrat?
You know, not so much, because I was so politically apathetic. Like I look back at 22-year-old Kelly and I'm like, oh, that girl would have voted Republican 100%. But I mean, I was voting, but I was just sort of voting for who some white guy probably told me to vote for. I wasn't aware enough.
Yeah.
And that was another spark for me, was like, I'm sick of going to the voting booth and not even knowing who these jokers are. Like I want to be an informed voter. And so that was another one of the things that kind of got me digging a little bit more into what is even going on here. And then I realized, oh shoot, I actually don't agree with all of these people that assume
that comment you just put up, April, was really, really good. The one from Liv. Yeah. I identify with that comment so much about, you know, I started my political journey of deconstructing long before I started, before I don't know. It's weird to say, but I became a lot more socially conscious politically. And then I stepped back and I went, well, but the gospel does this too. And that was kind of a weird transition for me. Also, random thought of the night. I saw somebody say, Amanda said earlier that she's from Northeast Arkansas. I'm originally from Jonesboro. So I'm curious if there's not a lot in Northeast Arkansas. So I'm curious if Amanda is also from Jonesboro, but anyway. So that is super interesting, Kelly. And so you just kind of hopped in to kind of fill a void. Because you were like, I'm not just going to stand here and you know, and I hear that a lot, especially from Democrats here in Oklahoma. Like, I'm going to run in a district, or I'm going to run in a race that I know that I really don't have a lot of chance in, but you know, because I mean, Oklahoma voted 70% Trump, you know, in the last election, and our local elections are even more lopsided than that at times. Tell me kind of that thought process of like, hey, I'm going to do this. Knowing, I mean, did you kind of have an idea that you weren't going to win? And was it more about just impacting hearts and minds, or did you just go in like, I'm going to give it 110%. I'm going to try to go win. And, you know, I mean, I could see it both ways.
Yeah, no, it's a valid question. And sometimes I laugh looking back at like, oh my God, I knew so little about the political landscape when I jumped into it. I literally saw a whole, like, oh, no one's running, I'm going to jump in. And I looked up the previous numbers and stuff, but I am a hardcore optimist. I was like, those numbers don't really apply to me. I mean, I'm going to run a different kind of campaign. This is a different kind of opponent. It was just a very different race. And so the race before me, I think, got like 33% of the Democratic votes. I managed to push it to almost 38%. So, I mean, I moved the needle substantially, but not obviously enough to flip. But I was pretty naive as to how simple it is to flip a district. It's long work. It's a long game. And so I very much though, I was like, I think I'm going to run for this. So I messaged the Democratic Party on Facebook and I was like, hey, yo, I'm over in District 90. Anybody running? Like, I don't see And they were like, give me a call. And so they took like 5 minutes and stalked me just to make sure I wasn't totally bonkers. And they were like, you seem fine.
Oh my gosh.
And so, but I mean, there wasn't anybody to do, nobody was going to do it. And I just really feel strongly, like, if you can do good and you've got the ability and the capacity and the energy and want to, why stop? I mean, I had some imposter syndrome for sure. Like, I don't know enough about this, but then it was like, you know what? I don't think all the white guys jumping up to run for office right now are trying to talk themselves out of it. They're trying to talk themselves into it. And I was like, you know what? Just stop it with the internalized misogyny. Like, you're smart enough to figure it out as you go. And I did. So
that's such a great point, because how often do we see people inside of our culture, and not to derail too far from the conversation, but how often do we see people inside of our culture that have been given, so white males in America predominantly, right, have always had that step or steps of privilege, right? And so it's like, I don't have all the pieces, but I can find them, right? Yes. Is the mindset. Yes. Where women who have been pushed back because of misogyny, people of color who have been pushed back because of racism, women of color who have been pushed back because of misogyny and racism.
Yeah.
Their first gear, a lot of times, like you're saying, is and I hear that over and over again, I'm not speaking on behalf, but it just
Mhm.
from all the stories I've heard, is I don't have all the information, so I better not do this. It's really
Right.
fascinating to me that that's the mindset. So what was the thing that got you kind of to overcome that and go, I'm going to push ahead?
Well, I really do live by this mentality of like anything I want to do, I can figure out how to do. And we've got access to unlimited information. And so if I have a problem in my life, with something with my kids or something with my marriage or something with my car, you can figure out options on how to solve. I'm a problem solver. It's what I enjoy doing. And so I was like, why am I not applying that same logic to this? Sure, I don't know every single thing about being a state representative, but I can learn. I can read, listen, and I had all kinds of people after I announced and said, hey, I'm willing to do it, who were rushing to my aid. Like, hey, let me help you do this. Let me help you do this. And were willing to teach me along the way. And so it ended up being super empowering.
That's awesome. I have a question. You mentioned in your TikTok earlier today that you haven't really talked about some of the responses you got from, I guess, church people when they found out you were running as a Democrat. Like, what were some of the crazier ones?
And I don't know that anything was totally just off the wall, but it shocked me because people that I knew for a really long time who had rocked my babies in the nursery, who had broke bread with me at my, suddenly didn't trust me. And I was told all the time, you got to call and ask for money constantly when you're running for office. And that part's the worst.
Yeah.
People would be like, I'm sorry, I can't really associate myself with you publicly. And so they didn't even want their name on a donation form. Or I would ask, hey, would you mind to put a sign up in the yard? And they're like, you know what? Because of the church, I just don't. Not people that work at the church, mind you, just people that attended the church couldn't put their lifelong friend name in their yard. And I was just like, what's happening right now? And I couldn't even process it at the time because it was honestly so hurtful to me and I had freaking work to do. And so it was only after the campaign that I kind of made peace with that of like, well, you know what? I've kind of moved in my belief system here and they're not there yet. And that's fine. But it was hurtful. It was incredibly hurtful. And none of that was ever really repaired, unfortunately. But it was ignorance. They didn't understand.
Yeah, it's really tragic how many people put a political party over really close friends and sometimes even family. It's like your political party even over your own blood.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had some, there's family that don't really talk to us anymore. There's what's bizarre to me is family that refused to acknowledge I ran for office. It was
it was a hoax. Fake news. It didn't happen.
Fake news.
I'm this is so weird because this is all I can talk about right now because it kind of consumes your life at the time and just avoid it. It was bizarre. It was really bizarre. Hey, thanks, Stephanie. Appreciate you.
I have discovered that, and especially so, and sometimes I feel guilt on this. So since my platform on TikTok took off, people are a lot more acutely aware of my personal feelings on a number of topics, right? Inside the church, inside politics. Sometimes Tamara says I had a sign and a t-shirt. I want a t-shirt. It's not going to do you any good in Oklahoma City, but I want one. But I kind of dealt with this and I continue to deal with this battle between two things. And it's that sometimes I feel guilty because I apparently I wasn't vocal enough early on for people to realize what I was about. And then the other side of that is it is amazing how many people who've known you for, like what you're talking about, 10, 15, 20 years, who will just set you down and dismiss you because they're like, oh, you're one of those demon rats or whatever. And it's like
demon rats.
And it's just so insane to me how that happens. So, I mean, not to, cause I know we were trying to keep this 10 or 15 minutes, but not to prolong it too far, but did you find yourself, so after the dust had settled and everything like that, what was the process for you to process those losses in your life? Because that had to have been, we talk a lot about mental health on this podcast and on this live stream. What was that process like to try to walk back through that? Because that had to hurt.
It did freaking hurt. And in a weird way at the time, not anymore. Okay. We're over you now, COVID. But at the time I was kind of thankful for COVID because I was like, I don't really want to go to church right now. I don't want to be around all these people who didn't want to associate themselves with me.
Yeah.
Right.
I needed a breather from that. So I'm very open on my TikTok. I don't talk about it super frequently, but I certainly don't hide that I consistently go to therapy. And so that was something that I was able to process through with a therapist. And thankfully I made like-minded friends during the process, which was incredibly helpful in healing as well. And so I found myself realizing like, okay, I'm kind of grasping to hang on to some friendships that don't want to hang on to me. And so we need to kind of, not that I like cut ties with anybody. I would, talk to anybody that I saw, but it was just a kind of surreal experience. Yeah. Definitely just needed some time. And I was thankful that we got some kind of space to do that.
Do you still go to that same church?
We haven't been back since COVID because we are just, we don't play with COVID.
Yeah. Well, in Arkansas, I think I saw an article that there's only like 8 ICU beds in the whole state right now.
Yeah. We're not.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I saw a very concerned, and not to call anybody out, so I'm going to be careful how I say this. A family member of mine who is extremely conservative in Arkansas lost 2 friends in the past week to COVID.
Yeah.
Is in his 60s. It hit very close to home twice in the same week. And it is somebody I saw posting on Facebook like constantly. So I snoozed him for 30 or 60 days because there was a lot of posts about don't take this, and I don't want to jump because I know we're going to get into this later, but don't take this demon vaccine, this devil, the mark of the beast or whatever. And he literally came out and he goes, I have lost 2 friends in the last week. I don't care about your political affiliations. Take the vaccine. And it's a damn shame that we have to watch people die.
Yep.
Just start taking this serious. That is insane to me. I live with a trauma nurse who I have walked into the living room, who works night shifts. I walked into the living room in the morning and found her staring at the wall because of the things she's seen.
Yeah.
We need to stop. Like it is not so damn hard to put on a mask and to take a vaccine. Nobody's taking your freedom. Like, and this nonsense that I've seen about, it's equivalent to, the Star of David that Jews wore during Nazi.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Stop it. Stop it. You are defaming anyone who has ever been actually oppressed.
Yeah.
Sorry, that is a soapbox for me. So good for you, Kelly. That's great. And I know we need to kind of make a transition, but it's good to see people are starting to wake up, but how many lives is it going to cost?
Yeah. Well, that's the sad part is, and I think this goes, this is one thing that I've been pushed back as I've moved from my conservative beliefs to a more, liberal, progressive, whatever people would paint me as. A lot of it did take personal experiences for me to change because I was so indoctrinated. And, and I think a lot of it was brainwashing, and you get yourself in this echo chamber where you're only surrounded by people that are saying the same thing you already believe. And so it almost takes a personal experience for a lot of these people to wake up. It's a shame, but I don't.
Who hasn't had a personal experience with COVID? Like who doesn't know someone who's died of COVID? And so that's where I'm just like, okay, I'm having a hard time staying patient. Because
no shit because I mean think about sorry there it was we're explicit now. I said I was going to try to do better tonight and I didn't do it.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
but I mean think about this, like the United States has more COVID deaths than any country in the world. And I understand that we're a bigger country, like, and I understand, because conservatives want to argue about per capita and da-da-da-da-da. It does not matter. 600,000 people in the United States have died from COVID. Like, a friend or a friend of a friend, like you do. And how close is it going to have to hit to your house before you decide to put a piece of cloth over your face?
I know.
Or get a vaccine? Like, these people, man, I'm serious. But let me ask this question to kind of, I don't know. Are we in a mid roll, or are we?
Well, we can mid roll. I mean, I wanted to ask Kelly one question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we move into COVID, because that I feel like going to be a larger conversation.
Yeah.
But so Kelly, this is going to change just a little bit. But so you mentioned there were people that surprised you in a negative way, and just how they treated you when they found out you were a Democrat. Were there any people that surprised you in a positive way that maybe you didn't realize that they were also more left leaning, or were there any good surprises?
Absolutely. And it was fewer finding people that were left leaning, but finding people who lean right, vote strictly Republican, who were willing to listen to me and who did vote for me. And so abortion is the biggest thing for folks around here. And they would be like, what? You're Democrat, but they're pro-choice. And I'm like, listen, let's talk about that. Okay, if you'll humor me with the conversation, what if we focused on preventing unplanned pregnancies? Because about some critical thinking. Why are people getting abortions? Because it is an unplanned pregnancy that they're not ready for. So how about we all work together on access to healthcare, access to birth control, freaking sex education. Y'all, I'm not playing. Don't know how babies are made because we refuse to talk about sex with them, apparently. So we've got to focus on the basics, and countries with comprehensive sex education have drastically lower teen pregnancy rates. And so when someone would hear me out and listen to, no, even the most staunch abortion activists are not out here like more abortions. Nobody's saying that. I think everyone's happy with fewer abortions. And we also need to realize that abortion is always going to be readily available to the wealthy who can do what they need to do. And so, or what they plan to do. So I just wanted to focus on, hey, we've got ways that we can prevent this. We actually want the same thing at the end of the day. So let's just take it 3 steps back. And then they were able to be like, oh, you know what? I think I can vote for you because I wasn't just out to kill babies. And I mean, hello, I've got 7 kids. Like, I've been for life. Okay.
Yeah.
The Republicans' argument about, like, for example, the Second Amendment is always, well, you look at these cities, look at these places that, outlaw guns, people still get guns, right? Look how the war on drugs work. Drugs are still out there.
Right.
That's always their argument.
Yeah.
But they never want to look at that same argument with abortion. They never do. They never go, if people want abortions, they're going to get abortions. But it's just going to be back in and I've said this before early on, like probably in season 1, it's going to be back in a closet with a coat hanger. So do we really want it happening in dangerous ways for the mother, or do we want to not only allow a safe operation, but then also to do a better job educating? And that's such a good point. It's like, you could use Ben Shapiro's argument against him, because anytime somebody asks him about abortion, he's like, well, 99% of abortions are, unplanned pregnancies for healthy mothers, right? Or whatever. And that
one's on you.
And that one's on you. Well, you know what, Ben, you're right. You're absolutely right. But what if we started looking at ourselves and saying, we're not educating well enough. We're not equipping well enough to combat that. I have often said, as a left-leaning, a lot of my friends in Oklahoma would call me uber super liberal or whatever. I have often said this. I don't want to make abortions illegal. I want to make them irrelevant. I want to make them irrelevant. In other words, we are educating so well. We are equipping so well. We are fostering and adopting so well, which, by the way, Kelly, I've adopted 3 as well. We fostered and adopted. So much love to you on that. We have definitely a bond there, but
I love it.
But that we're equipping, that we're educating, and that we're fostering and adopting so well that those abortions that are optional become irrelevant, because we are doing those things really, really, really well. But because we don't put those mothers in danger, because in your opinion, as a Republican, you're not committing one murder at that point. you're committing to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what?
Got that blood on your hands.
Listen, government aside, the church has effed this up because
yes,
when a little girl in the youth group finds herself pregnant, how pro-life are mom and dad? Really? Okay, so we're not creating an environment where kids feel safe to come and say, "Oh my God, guys, I'm pregnant." Because then all this shame sets in, and we screwed it up 10 steps ago. And so people really think that we can be like, oh, just don't have sex. We're going to have the youth pastor sit up here and talk about how bomb sex is after you're married, but don't do it. Okay. My wife, don't do it. It's so weird and creepy.
Oh, it's super weird. Doesn't make any sense.
Shocked when kids do actually have sex anyway, because they're still going to do it. And then we've got no plan. And so I'm just like, you keep speaking out of both sides of our mouth here, and I can't.
No, I remember when I was in like high school and college, and my parents were very conservative evangelical. They were pastors and of a pretty large church. And I remember thinking, and I wasn't even like sexually active at this time, but I remember thinking, obviously I had those thoughts and thinking that the worst thing that I could do in the world would be to get pregnant. And I remember actually thinking like, I would rather tell my parents that I like murdered someone than tell them I was pregnant.
Oh my God.
Because of the shame that would have been around like the pastor's daughter being pregnant. And so that's a huge thing that girls actually go through. So the church literally pushes them to get abortions, and also like there's Christian colleges and plenty of scenarios that I know where the girl in college got pregnant and they kicked her out for keeping the baby. She could have easily gone out and gotten an abortion and no one would have known.
Yeah.
And they punish them for doing the thing that they want them to do.
I can't.
I had a terrible situation in a church that I served in. Actually, the very first full-time church that I was on staff at. And I started not only my marriage early, but my ministry early. My wife and I got married at 20 and 19. And then I woke up one day and I was like, oh shit, like I gotta like make money somehow. And so it was really wild. Like Radio Shack's not gonna do it. Yes, I worked at Radio Shack, friends. But I can rewire your radio, so don't worry. But I took a position in the panhandle of Oklahoma, and any Okies know like the panhandle is like desolate place. There are literally more cows registered in the panhandle than there are people. But I took a position in Turpin, Oklahoma, which is like a town of like 700 and something. And I was doing full-time ministry. We were young. And so anyway, had some really great kids in that youth group. I was doing student ministry. I was the associate pastor there. And one of my kids goes off to college. She goes out to a party one night and decides to try some alcohol. Had always grown up, in a really conservative home, decides to try some alcohol and then gets pregnant. It's just a mistake, right? It was just a, it was like, hey, I'm going to go out and try the college life. And she ended up, having a lifetime consequence out of it. Like, it just happens. And so the family comes to me and they were super frustrated at first. And then they just decided, which I thought this was great. They just made this transition into, we're freaking having a grandbaby. Like, how dope is this? Like, yes. And I was super excited because like, she was like, oh, you guys can babysit and come to the hospital and be one of the first ones to, like hold it or whatever. And like my wife and I have kids. So we were like, yeah, like we were super excited. Like we love this kid. And I remember going to the church and saying, hey, like I was in a deacons meeting, which in Baptist churches, like that's a thing. And I was in this deacons meeting and I remember going in and they were like, does anybody have anything they want to put on the calendar? And I was like, well, this family wants to do a baby shower for their daughter on such and such date. Like, let's just put it on the calendar. I said, and like my wife and I have decided to cover the fee. Like we'll cover the fee on behalf of the family or whatever. And I'll never forget the chairman of the deacons looks at me and goes, well, what message do you think that that's sending our community by allowing her to have her baby shower here we're condoning her sinful behavior.
Gross.
And I was so taken aback by that. I was like 20 or maybe 21 at the time. And it was like my first, big kid job or whatever in the real world. And I just looked around and I was like, you cannot be serious right now. And he was like, well, we just can't condone that kind of, sin. We can't condone those sins of the flesh. I'll never forget that. We can't condone these sins of the flesh. Wow. And I was like, but what message did, and I remember just asking, what message does it send to the community that no matter what happens, we are here with you and we walk beside you. We still love you. Like, no matter what choices you make, no matter what, sins or fallings you commit, like, we are going to walk with you and be right here with you and love you and shower you with hope and grace and goodness. And they were like, we can't do that. And they literally refused to have her baby shower.
It's so stupid. I hate that.
It broke my heart. And it's like we do that kind of stuff, but then act like abortion is the end of the world. It's like women who are in those positions, young mothers or mothers who feel unequipped or whatever the case is, or who feel mentally unprepared, whatever the case is, are damned if they do, damned if they don't. And the church is telling them it's bad no matter what. You don't have the baby, you're a sinner. And if you do have the baby, you're a sinner. It's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
And you know what? We've just got to do better.
Almost like the church is trying to control women from every direction.
Ooh,
imagine that.
That'll preach. Kelly, I have a quick question for you, and then we'll do a mid-roll and move on to COVID. But around the abortion issue, this is one thing as a newer Democrat, I guess, that has frustrated me about Democrats, and maybe you can like shine some light on it, is just that I've never met anyone, even like the most liberal people that I'm friends with, that love abortions. Like, I don't know anyone that's a big abortion fan. Like, no one wants to get pregnant just to have an abortion. Like, people don't get off on it.
Nobody's like, let's kill babies.
Right. It's a medical procedure that is not pleasant. So my question for you is, and I get that it's probably a lose-lose for like the more mainstream Democrats to even talk about abortion, because if they don't come across like super pro-choice to the extreme, that they might lose their more far-left people. But my question is, as someone who still has a lot of Republican friends, as I'm sure we all do, when I talk about the abortion issue, which is the one that they always bring up, they point to these Democrats on the stage, like when Hillary Clinton said like she didn't have, like, a baby doesn't have a constitutional right until like they're born, and they take that and they sensationalize it, and it's usually out of context completely. But I feel like they could get a lot more Republicans that are disenfranchised with Trump, and those people, if some Democrats just said more like, hey, no one likes abortion. We just want to we want to lower the number just like you, but we want to do it in a safe and effective way. And I'm sure that there are people that are saying that, but it's not hitting the mainstream. Anyway, I was just wondering like how you approach that, if you've had any luck, and that's just been like my one frustration, because I've been trying to get people to move over that don't like Trump, and I try to get them to vote for Biden, and they couldn't do it because they would look at Kamala Harris, where she just said, oh, it's a woman's choice, and just just very
I get what you're saying. How some like there was some awards ceremony at some point where a lady was like, well, if I hadn't had my abortion, I couldn't be here right now. And that triggered the heck out of a lot of people. But what I always try to go back to is we are going to get nowhere by arguing the morality of it, because at the end of the day, we simply do not all agree. Some people think that life is this exact moment, and some people don't think it's until later. The Bible, if we want to really get into it, talks about a baby's first breath being when. So like, there's a lot of angles you can take, and to me, that just turns into a hairy mess that is going nowhere. Which is why I always want to take it 3 steps back to, hey, let's talk prevention and how we can do that. And there's always going to be extreme folks on any side of anything. But I refuse to argue the morality of it with people, because there's just not it doesn't even matter what I personally think. It's not that's not the point. We're looking at policy that makes life better for people and helps people, parents, babies, everyone.
That's so good. And I agree 1,000%. And I wish that, so sometimes my frustration, especially as I've moved left, and I think somebody actually mentioned this earlier, that, and I was going to ask this, but we probably need to move on. Somebody mentioned earlier that, that I don't know if I've moved so far left as the right has just sprinted in the opposite direction of me. That they have moved more than I necessarily have. But I think so often the left overplays their hand when it comes to these topics of, talking about abortion and stuff like that. I feel like a candidate who would just come in and go, you know what? I am, and this is something that I stand on. I've said this a lot. I'm comprehensively pro-life. So in other words, I'm about the baby, but I'm also about the mother, and I'm also about the person of color. So there are a lot of lives to consider in every single topic and every single decision that we make, and what is for the greater good of people inside of our state, inside of our country, inside of our communities, whatever the case is. What is for the greater good? And those are the questions that we have to answer. And I think those are biblical questions that we have to answer, not just, kill a baby until it takes its first breath, or the other side of, if you ever touch the hair on a baby's head inside the womb, you're a murderer. It's so extreme. What if somebody just slowed down and said, you know what? I just care about life, and I care about health, and I care about the goodness of people, and I care about the success of people inside my community, inside my state, inside my country. And I think both parties could take notes from that, to be perfectly honest. Now, obviously, all three of us lean pretty far to the left, at least comparatively to our states anyway. But it is so important to understand we could be better off if people would just say what is good for all of us, not just how I feel. And that has been a major issue.
Yeah. Kelly, how has your faith influenced your politics?
Well, I mean, it's what's landed me over here. And I know that is something that's kind of, wow, it's not just this issue, but I mean, I'm looking at the Bible and I'm like, oh, let's talk about another policy, like how typically Republican policy tends to benefit the rich. And, we see the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and we're giving tax cuts over here and we're penalizing people over here. And I'm like, when did Jesus come in here and be like, way to make the big bucks, fella, screw those
right
poor? He didn't do that. It was all about helping the poor. It was all about giving away everything you have. It was all about not letting your wealth be a barrier to your relationship with Jesus. And so I'm just like, I'm having a really hard time understanding how we can not see this. We are to look at the least of these. So, I mean, many issues led me more to like, if we're going to go back to the early 90s bracelets, like what would Jesus do? What would Jesus literally do here? And I think he flipped some freaking tables.
Yeah.
Amen.
I 1,000% agree. And actually, Danny says in the chat, my faith has made me go left. And I agree. The more I evaluated the ministry, the life, and the teachings of Jesus, the further left, especially in my circles, that I got. Because it was like, and Patrick raised a good point. He said, if you're pro-life, then you have to be consistent. You have to be against the death penalty and anti-war, which is really good points. But then also you have to be pro-mask and pro-vaccine too, to be relevant here in our current state. I think that is a good point, because I think about Jesus, and it was really hard for me to take a step back, especially from my very fundamentalist Baptist upbringing and then going to a conservative Baptist college, to step back and look and go, I finally had I think the thing that sparked it for me, Christians lean left, Paulians lean right. That's right.
You a follower of Jesus or a follower of Paul?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I had to step back and go, because I had a professor who was a younger guy. He was my New Testament professor at OBU. And he goes, you all understand that Jesus wasn't a white dude. And it was the first time I'd heard that from a person of authority in my life. Like we just didn't talk about it, right? Like it wasn't like people were like up there like Jesus is the whitest person ever. It wasn't said like that. It was just implied.
Yeah.
But then when somebody finally looked at me and said Jesus was Middle Eastern, you know, from this area where, I mean, he could have very well been black, and at the very least, like dark skinned.
Yeah.
Jesus wasn't a white guy. Jesus was a refugee. Like, look at his lineage, look at who he was, look at his history. And I stepped back and I went, but look at how conservatives treat people of color and treat refugees and immigrants.
Or even just Democrats.
Or even, but I mean, like,
yeah.
I'll never forget. And I know this is kind of like a joke now that I'm, you know, obviously deconstructing, but you know, I look at my first like mission trip right outside of the country. And I think about the first time I went into a Mayan village in Mexico. And I was playing soccer with some kids. Like we were just playing soccer, which I will say in defense, this missionary who still lives and works inside these villages literally told us, he goes, do not share the gospel with them. And it was a bunch of pastors and myself. And these pastors were pissed. They were so mad. They were like, what do you mean? We have to give them the word of truth. We have to give them life. We have to change their life with Jesus. And this whole thing. And he was like, do not do it. He was like, because they will hospitably tell you that they are taking your Jesus and just pile it into this ball of worldview that they have. He goes, how about you just serve them this week? And so literally what we were doing was installing stoves into their huts that didn't have electricity or running water, because they always kept an open campfire in the middle of their house. And what they were finding is that their kids were basically like, their lungs were like, it was like they were smoking like 3 packs of cigarettes a day.
Oh man.
Because it was an open campfire, like right in the middle of their home. And so they were literally putting in these, and you know, they were having to burn tons of wood to keep warm and everything else. And so we were literally going in, and our only job was to install these stoves that like vented the smoke out of their huts. And it had lava rock in it, so they had to use a lot less resources to keep it warm, and they could cook on top of it, which was the main reason that they kept the fire going, right? And it was super fascinating to me. And he goes, we just need to love these people and make their lives better, because that's what Jesus would do. And it blew my mind. But I think about the first time I was there, and I was playing soccer with some kids, and I pulled out my cell phone because I wasn't wearing a watch. I pulled out my cell phone to check the time, and these kids just stopped. And it was like, whoa, dude, like your privilege and your ridiculousness is sky high. Like you need to think about where other people are coming from. And it was from that moment on that I went, if I was raising my family in a place that was paying me like cents on the dollar, right? And I was raising my family in a place with no running water and no electricity, I would absolutely fucking jump the border on behalf of my family for their benefit, because it would give them a better life. And how dare we as Americans, listen to me, how dare we as Americans say, as a place that says, bring us your poor, you're tired, you're weary, yearning to be free, how dare we say that you don't belong here? We are a melting pot. This country is a place of refuge, and we have so many resources, so many opportunities. It is plentiful. It is bountiful. And how dare we look at people and say, you don't belong here. Go back to the other side. We're going to build a wall. Freaking insane. And that was the first time I looked at it and I went, we're wrong. We're just wrong. Like we're not even close to right on this when we're talking about, well, we only want people to come here if they're legal. No, shut up. Shut up. Yeah. Because guess what? Jesus wasn't that way.
Yeah.
What you've done to the least of these, you've done to me.
Mm.
So the least of these, we have built a wall and sent them back to places that they didn't have running water and electricity. Shut up.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough. That doesn't match Jesus. It doesn't match the gospel, and it has no place here.
Yeah.
Amen. Preach it. That is a mic drop. So I'm going to run to a mid-roll now.
Sorry. Latest content and encouragement. You can check us out on TikTok by following @evangelicalish or subscribe on YouTube by searching evangelicalish. That's evangelical with an ISH. And don't forget to catch our live streams each and every single Wednesday night on YouTube at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 Pacific. And now back to the Evangelicalish podcast.
Yay. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I literally had nothing better to add to that. So I was like, mid-roll.
I just realized I kind of blacked out for a second, just went on a rant because I remember standing in that place with people. Like, this is going to sound so terrible, but I was literally there with people who were so conservative. They were serving these people for the week on this mission trip, right? But then they would go home and say, close the border. We have to do better on, border patrol. We need to build a wall. Like, these are the same people. And I'm like, how can you serve these people and go into their homes and take like this is crazy to me that we would go into their homes and we would take their homemade tortillas and eat their food and break bread with them. How dare we do that and then tell them that they don't belong in our country?
Yeah.
How insane is that? How asinine is that? This America first mentality is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, it is so wrong. It is not Christ-centered. It is not gospel-centered. It is not God-centered. It is selfish. It is selfish. Christian nationalism is freaking selfish. And so I remember the first time I was standing there and I had a newer pair of tennis shoes on. And this kid was playing soccer with no shoes. And so I had one of the translators come over and I said, and please don't take this as me bragging or anything, because I'm certainly not. But I just had one of the translators come over and I said, he asked him hey, where are your shoes? And he goes, I don't have any shoes. And I just took the shoes off my feet and gave him to him because I'm like, how ridiculous, this kid playing soccer, kicking around with other kids, a ball with other kids, that he doesn't have shoes. I can freaking go to Dick's Sporting Goods or Academy or Walmart even and get more shoes. Right. And this kid doesn't even have shoes. That is nonsense that we wouldn't allow these people to come into our country who want to be a part of this country and want to come in here to make better lives for them and their kids and their family. I worked in a Title I school where 90% of our students were Hispanic and most of them were illegal. And guess what? Those were some incredible kids and some incredible families because they cared passionately about their kids' education. And the story time after time after time was, I just want my life to be better for my kids. I just want my life to be better for my wife, for my husband. I just want it to be better. And how wrong are we that we would say, no, you don't belong here because you're not white enough or you're not American enough or you don't speak enough English like that. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's such a soapbox for me. And I know we need to move on, but it just pains me so much.
Jeremy, you're on a roll and I'm with you 99%, but I've got to stop you. It's easy because it is so indoctrinated in our vocabulary, but you just said the children were there illegal and there's no illegal people. They're not. So they're undocumented.
Exactly.
Yeah. That when I catch somebody saying that, I'm like, oh, you know what? I can't let you say it. I can't let you say it because people are not illegal.
That's right.
But people actually treat them like they are 100%. But I get your passion is coming in hot. And we're with you 100%. It's so frustrating.
And Christian nationalism, you mentioned it, Jeremy, is part of the reason.
Thank you for that, Kelly, by the way. That is, because we're so indoctrinated in that.
Right? You've heard it so long for certain.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the topic that we were going to talk about.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. It was
really
wonderful.
Bad. I'm so sorry.
No, this got off track a little bit sometimes.
No, it's fine. It actually rolls in really well because Christian nationalism is one of the main reasons I think that COVID is respiking again because some of the biggest perpetrators of people that are anti-vax and refuse to wear masks because of their personal rights are Republican Christians. Like you have Greg Locke, who I don't know if y'all saw this tweet, but he's been ranting from the pulpit that if you show up to his church in a mask, he will kick you out. Mm-hmm. And he's got a big sign on the front of his church, like in the yard of his church, that says, "This is a mask-free church campus. Kindly remove them or stay in your car. We celebrate faith over fear." And so he tweeted that out. And he's like, yeah, we double down. Like, I'm not playing Democrat games, because it's, of course, COVID's Democrat. And I love this. Someone replied to his tweet and said, "Is it a gun-free campus also? Hashtag faith over fear."
That's so good.
And Greg Locke replied to this guy. This is a pastor of a church, and said, "Show up acting stupid and find out."
Did the pastor just say "fuck around and find out"?
Yeah.
That's
the pastor
exactly
said
what
that.
he said. That's exactly what he said.
So we celebrate faith over fear. We're not going to get vaccinated or wear a mask because we're not afraid of COVID, but we're going to carry a gun in case a big bad perpetrator comes in, because God can protect you from a disease, but not from guns. So.
Woo! Yeah, that's a doozy.
Yeah, it is a doozy. And also, Sean Foyt was just in Portland and tweeted out basically a giant, hold on, where is it? It's a giant picture of him with a bunch of armed people, like carrying semi-assault rifles. And he's like, "These are all ex-military, ex-police, private security, and most importantly, lovers of Jesus and freedom. If you mess with them or our First Amendment right to worship God, you'll meet Jesus one way or another." That is the worship pastor, Sean Foyt, going around saying, if you're going to keep us from worshiping, we're going to shoot you. What the actual crap is going on?
Nice, April.
Can you just see God up on his throne, like, boys, settle down. Like, I can't.
Well, wow. Jesus is like, love your neighbor, pray for your enemies, turn the other cheek. And Sean Foyt's like, if you stop me from worshiping my God, I'm going to pop you one.
Oh my gosh. Wowzers.
I'm going to pop you one?
I don't know. It just came out.
I'm sorry. I was like, what does that mean?
When it came out, I was like, I don't think that's the phrase. I hope we just move on from that.
I'm going to bust the cap in your ass, I think is the phrase you're digging.
Whatever.
Right
pop
there.
you, like pop a bullet. Is that not a thing? Is that a phrase? I don't know. Let's just move
on. Sure. You're 100% right. Like, I don't understand it. Like, why is it? Yeah, and that's the ultimate question, right? How can you be pro-gun and anti-mask? Like, it makes zero sense. Like, Jesus will protect us from COVID. Well, Jesus will also protect you from anything else. Listen, all you have to have is the faith of, the size of a grain of, a mustard seed, right? Like, that's all you have to have. And so, just a tiny bit of belief will keep you away from the mass shooters in your church, of course. But you don't have enough faith to make sure that your people aren't armed by the back door.
Yeah.
And there are so many churches, especially here in Oklahoma, and I can only imagine in Arkansas and Tennessee, that literally have people like on a volunteer group that they're like, oh, these people have their, conceal and carry license, and they're gonna be the, the FOIA monitors. Like, I know that's a thing here in Oklahoma. The FOIA monitors are all armed.
FOIA,
right? The FOIA arm monitors, right? Because it was a thing here, and it definitely is a thing.
Sorry, I was laughing because Kelsey in the chat said "Foyt" means moist in German, and I don't know why that's making me laugh.
I hate that word. So
moist.
Much. Moist.
I want to start calling him Sean Moist.
Don't do it, just for my sake. I don't want to hear that. Well, I actually do, because
he deserves to be moist.
He deserves to make
in, like, the grossest way.
Yeah, in the gross.
I don't even know
nowhere.
In the grossest way. Let's bring this back on the rails.
Sorry.
So, no, you're good. But I think I'm just like, man, you know what? You can't say on one hand that you need FOIA monitors to carry their guns to protect your church and say that you don't need the vaccine and a mask. Like, that's stupid. And, you know, this Greg Locke nonsense this man is out of control. And I think he loves being a troll. And I think he enjoys the attention that he's getting from Right Wing Watch, because he's mentioned them from the pulpit.
Oh, he mentions them every week. He's like, I know Right Wing Watch gonna put this up later, but I don't care. I don't care what them demon rats have to say about me.
Demon rats. Yeah. But I'm just like, here's my question though. Like, first off, from the pulpit. Okay. Well, let me back up. If people feel led to wear a mask in your congregation, what is the problem? Like, if they want to protect themselves and others or whatever they think they're doing, what is the problem? I don't get it. If they want to get vaccinated, and there's a lot of people who post on my TikTok videos who were like, yeah, it's going to come out that he privately got vaccinated without telling anybody, which I would die. I think that would be so funny. And it's probably true, but
I'm sure.
I think, you know, what is the issue there? Like, it's a non-issue. Like it's no big deal. But my concern here is that you would get up in the pulpit and that you would spend time worried about political stuff and not actually spend time talking about Jesus. Because why am I there? I'm not there to talk about politics, no matter what my leanings are. I'm not there to talk about the current events, no matter what my leanings are. I'm there to just worship Jesus and who he is and what he has done in my life. And your pulpit is no place for your nonsense. And especially if you're a freaking loony bin, like, you know, crazy person like Greg Locke.
So do y'all know who Sean Claiborne is?
No, I don't guess so.
Okay. So I think he's an author, but he's like a more progressive Christian, but he's a speaker and he's definitely a Christian, very outspoken. But he recently, my mom told me this, so hopefully she got the right name right since I'm about to say it. But she said that Sean Claiborne is going to Greg Locke's church this Sunday with a mask and is trying to get people to go with him.
I've had several friends here in Oklahoma who were like, let's go on a road trip.
Yeah,
I want
Mask
to do
Squad.
it so bad.
I know. The only reason why I actually kind of want to, because I'm also in Tennessee, so I could drive over there. But also, I feel like I think it's over near Nashville. It's like I think it's a suburb of Nashville. I'm not entirely sure. But the only reason why I would be hesitant is because I feel like that's got to be a Delta variant, just hotspot. Like, 100%. Delta variant is just chilling in that circus tent. And I'm like, you know, I do want to make a point, but I also don't want to get Delta. So backing up to COVID. So we decided instead of, and I think this can lead into like a mini discussion about COVID. And there's so many conspiracies around the coronavirus in general, where it came from, the COVID vaccine. And so we decided tonight, instead of doing a hate comment or a top 5 list, to just say what our favorite, and by favorite, I mean like most ridiculous COVID conspiracy that we've heard from people from a Facebook group. There's lots out there. So let's go around and say what what we picked. Kelly, you want to go first?
Yes, please, Kelly.
I wrote it down in my feminist agenda.
Love it.
It's so detailed. My husband came home with this one today.
In your crazy leftist,
some real doozies. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening in this feminist agenda, but not this part. So he heard today at work that people are afraid that the unvaccinated people are eventually going to be shipped into internment camps that are going to be made out of old Walmart facilities that the government still owns. Stop. Okay. And this was all on the CDC website.
That all the unvaccinated people are going to go there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, okay, is there any truth whatsoever to this? Like I got, everything starts with like the tiniest grain of truth. Well, on the CDC site, it talks about ways to kind of contain the virus. And there are community isolation centers. Like if you come home with COVID, Jeremy, and you don't want to expose your family, Oklahoma probably doesn't have them. I don't think Arkansas does either. But in theory, somebody might be able to go to an isolation center to be able to quarantine. But, they think people are going to eventually be jailed there for not being vaccinated.
My question on this, I mean, lots of them, but is it one giant Walmart to hold all the unvaccinated people, or is it just like taking Walmart structures and building like
now listen,
a mosh posh of Walmart camps?
This is Walmart land. We have multiple Walmart facilities. Walmart is everywhere. People traded into everything. So, I mean, if you can include Walmart in your COVID conspiracy, then you are onto something.
Oh my gosh.
Well, just like, can I share this, please?
No, that's 1,000%. So there's going to be internment camps in every state. It's going to be made at Walmarts. Like there's like the fire marshal is going to have to approve a certain number. Like it's going to be like 300 to 400 in every Walmart. Like have you ever seen the movie Zombieland? Like it's going to remind you a lot of that.
Here's the thing. My favorite thing about these conspiracies is they lay it out like it's the most insane stuff. And at the very
so
end,
elaborate.
Without fail, it almost always has wake up in all caps. Wake up.
You sheeple.
So another thing that I've been seeing, someone was just commenting this on one of my TikToks today, that since I'm vaccinated, I am now like they want to hide themselves and quarantine from vaccinated people because they think vaccinated people have some kind of different thing that we can spread to. It's like they want to wear, like I've actually seen like a reverse psychology thing where they want to wear masks now to protect themselves from unvaccinated people, which whatever will make you wear a mask. Sure. You go for it. But anyway, Jeremy, what's yours?
So I had a couple, but my favorite one is the 5G thing, right?
That makes you magnetic.
That makes you magnetic, and that you radiate 5G after you get the coronavirus vaccine, and that your chances of cancer are. I think the stat that I read on this very unreputable website that I'm not even going to list to give them time, but that your chances of getting COVID-19 is spreading rapidly in many countries that do not that do have 5G networks, because the 5G being next to your head is what is making the coronavirus enter through your ear hole on your phones, and that you're 48 times more likely to get brain cancer.
Ooh, they got stats?
Cool. Yeah, wow, that's a statistic they used.
More likely to get brain cancer. And my question is the same question that they ask about the vaccine. What research have you done to find out that people are 48 more times to get brain
research?
Brain cancer.
Oh, your facts.
My favorite thing is they don't believe any doctor, like the majority of doctors, the majority of scientists, the CDC, the majority of educators, the majority of experts on any type of medical journal, but they'll quote some rando doctor from an obscure YouTube video that's like, oh no, this is the guy. This one is the one you got to listen to because he's a doctor.
Like if people saw the career path of Dr. Fauci, like he is ridiculously smart and has what was the number of presidents that he has given advice to? Like 5, right? Like, I mean, it's not just Republicans or Democrats. Like, this man has been in the game for a hot minute. Like, he didn't just wake up one day and go, guys, I think I'm gonna do some coronavirus today. Like, he wasn't like a garbage man who then decided to like be a coronavirus expert. That's not a thing. Like, this guy has been in disease control for a long time. And so, yeah, I just don't understand.
So here's my COVID conspiracy. And I think my favorite one, though, this is not the one I'm going to do. I think my favorite one is that the COVID vaccine makes you gay, which I've actually seen that.
Shut up.
No, I like it was made popular by some rabbi, I think, overseas, and then I saw it shared around here. And Lil Nas X even made a video making fun of it. He was like, "Guys, it's true. This is me before the vaccine." And he's just smiling, and then he's like, "This is me after," and he like does his little hand like that. He's like, "It made me gay."
Makes you gay.
But anyway, so the most ridiculous one, I literally just saw like 2 days ago. So last week, Texas and Florida had like third of all COVID cases in the whole country because they're surging like crazy because, DeSantis and Abbott are idiots and banned mask mandates. They opened up the whole states like way too early. They discourage people from getting the vaccine, yada, yada, yada. Like they've been awful this whole time.
Accurate.
So there's many reasons to explain why they are surging. I mean, Florida, I don't think ever shut down, but anyway, I'm in a Christian Facebook group on Facebook, and this is where I get the majority of my things I saw Christians post on Facebook.
Sounds like a really dangerous place.
It is. It's like a sneaky title. Like there's no like Republicanism or Trump in it, but it's all like Trump.
Yeah, there was. It's blatant. Christians on Facebook.
Yeah, there it is.
Trump,
Trumpy.
Yeah, but I'm a Christian on Facebook, and I'm not that way. But anyway, so this person.
Do you spend most of your time on Facebook?
I spend most of my time on Facebook taking screenshots of things that ridiculous Christians post on Facebook.
And then doing what? And then
I blast them on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's why I have Facebook. So anyway, okay, so this is insane. This new theory in this Christian group, and they're all like, "Oh, this makes so much sense," is that the extreme surge of cases in Florida and Texas is actually a bio attack to keep Trump from holding rallies and exposing election fraud. A bio attack.
Wow.
Not because people aren't getting vaccinated. It was a bio attack to keep Trump from holding freaking rallies.
Like it would stop him anyway.
Right. Like
my favorite thing is that because it didn't. I mean, Tulsa became like a place of death after he. I mean, literally, and I don't want to make light of this, but Herman Cain is dead because of the Tulsa rally. I just cut and dry.
Yeah.
And so it didn't stop him from doing anything. And he actually made fun of Joe Biden for hosting pre-planned rallies as digital events, right? Like he was like, "Oh, look at all those people there. It's just Joe by himself," whatever. And it's like, but wait a minute, dude. Like now you can't double back and say, "Well, it's because they kept me from doing my rallies." Joe didn't do rallies at all. He did digital stuff, and the DNC did a complete online event. Like there was nobody there. Like and people were like broadcasting from their homes and stuff like that. So I mean, no, shut up. I'm so sick of Donald Trump. And
how are they even still on the election fraud? Also, apparently he's supposed to be reinstated as president this month. August was the new month.
Well, 8 months.
I mean, they're going to move it again. It'll be like November next time.
Oh my gosh.
It'll be September because they do every month. You could mark your calendar by Trump reinstatements. Like you could just
new apocalypse. Like it's the new one. It's the one we're going to keep predicting, and then it's not
the new rapture. In a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, Donald Trump will be president.
Donald Trump is coming back, and so is Jesus. Like, I mean, I'm waiting for the first person who's like, those things are going to happen simultaneously.
Ooh, but would Trump be left behind?
Not to them. Are you serious? Those people who think that we're going to get sucked up into the sky, they also think Donald Trump gave his heart and his soul to Jesus. He cares passionately about the Lord.
I can't handle these people anymore. But it's really tragic. I mean, and we should probably end soon. But people are literally dying. Like these conspiracy theories and this misinformation is leading to people dying. I have a friend whose stepson has been in a coma on a ventilator for weeks now with COVID. And one of the last things he said to her, and he's in his 30s, one of the last things he said to her was, "I wish I would have got that stupid vaccine."
Shit.
And it's becoming the pandemic of the unvaccinated. And I don't understand. I really don't understand why these Republican governors are fighting so hard against people getting vaccinated and against people wearing masks, because they're killing their own people. It's their supporters who are paying the cost for believing them. I don't know if they're just evil, if they really believe what they're saying, if they also are just misinformed, if they're just caught up in it. I don't know that I'll ever understand it.
It's caught up in it because once your party makes a distinction on this is our platform, right? Then it's Katie bar the door. Sorry, that's a very Southern phrase, I'm sure, but like it's all out. We're gonna absolutely stand by this thing and be extreme about it. Here in Oklahoma, we have the largest youth camp, largest Christian youth camp in the world, literally. We have, on a normal summer, a non-COVID summer, there are 8,000 to 10,000 students at this camp a week at Falls Creek, Oklahoma. And 3 weeks ago, the speaker for that camp, when there was 5,000 students there, despite the pandemic, and churches from all over the country. 3 weeks ago, that speaker showed up, a guy who runs marathons. Part of his thing is that he talks about like running marathons with his dog. He has this like really expensive Rhodesian Ridgeback dog or whatever, which I think is super cool. Contracted COVID, got pneumonia, and died in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Was just gone. Went from preaching at the biggest youth camp in the world to being dead because of COVID.
Yeah.
Like
it's awful.
At what point are people like, how many lives is it going to take?
Yeah.
That's my question, is how many lives is it going to take?
Yeah.
Nicole in the chat says she had a friend who's 26 who died last week from COVID, and he had a 1-year-old daughter.
It's tragic. But it's easy to poke fun at the conspiracy theories. It's easy to get really angry about the mask and the vaccine. But what we all got to remember is that anger is always a secondary thing. There is always something underneath the anger, and it's sadness. It's complete heartbreaking because it's all so preventable. My husband's father passed away from COVID in January before the vaccine was available to him. I'm not sure that he would have gotten it, but I'm glad that we don't have to wonder about that because it wasn't available to him. But I will never forget how callously people just referred to, there were 15 deaths in Arkansas today. And just like, it's a number, like, our deaths are down. Like, no, those are 15 families that were destroyed today.
Yeah.
These are, they're not numbers, they're families, they're humans. And I don't care what you believe, like, I care about you as a person.
What was the stat that I saw the other day that it was like, and this was the nail in the coffin. Like, I feel like if anybody looked at this stat, it would make them pause. But unfortunately, because this is so politicized and so out of hand.
Yeah.
But it was something like there are 20,000 drunk driving deaths in the United States in a year. And so we tell people don't drink and drive and wear a seatbelt, right?
Yeah.
There have been 600,000 plus COVID deaths in a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we still have people saying, I'm not going to wear a mask because of my freedom. And I'm not taking that vaccine because it's the mark of the beast, or it's going to, it's going to give me cancer. Or I got it from, 5G, whatever. Nonsense.
Yeah.
Nonsense. The logic makes zero sense. And the funniest thing is that it was the conservatives for so long who were trumpeting getting vaccines, like for your kids anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were the ones who were out on the front lines, like, don't be an anti-vaxxer or whatever. And then now they're anti-vaxxers. So it's nonsense. It's stupid. The whole thing is insane. And we just got to do better. Like we just have to do better. And Republicans, you got to do better. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I try to get to the root of it because I know family and like friends that are very deep into the anti-vax and anti-COVID, and it's people that aren't necessarily anti-vax in general. They're just anti the
This
COVID. Yeah, this vax. And I don't know how to talk to them. And part of me just wonders if at the base level of it, because a global pandemic is a really scary thing when you feel like you don't have control and you feel like, maybe they feel like they're losing their values as a nation. And so there's this fear. And so they want to
What
make
are they
it.
losing?
Well, no,
Like,
I
that
know
doesn't
that.
even make sense.
I agree with you. I'm playing devil's advocate to try to get to the root of it, to try to see if there's a way to communicate and actually have this conversation with these people, because I do think it's easy to blame someone. It's a lot. There's a lot of fear if it's just like, oh my gosh, like this whole global pandemic that just killed hundreds of thousands of people just happened and no one was in control. And no one, no, it's almost like if they can blame, oh, it's a Democratic hoax, then it takes a little bit of the fear away from the unknown, because they at least have someone to blame. And I don't know, these are literally thoughts I have when I'm trying to sleep at night, because I'm like, I don't know how to justify it otherwise. Like, I do feel like there's some kind of deep rooted issue that's going on, and it does feel very fear based. I mean, these are a lot of the same people that when I was raised, the whole doctrine of my Christianity was based around fear, and don't do this, don't go to hell, don't. It's a fear based religion. Don't want to lose my rights. Don't want Jesus to come back before I have sex, or
But they want insurance for everything, right? Like, I mean, that's literally how they preach the gospel. It's fire insurance. It's get out of hell free card, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so why wouldn't you wear a mask and take a vaccine to get that same assurance? I mean, you freaking carry a gun. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I am absolutely, and we've discussed this on here before. I was raised in a different culture. I believe that guns are tools. They are literally like a hammer, right? Like, that's how I was raised, and you respect them for what they're tools to do, right? Like, whether that is provide meat and sustenance for your family. One of the only 2 spankings I ever got from my grandpa was for shooting a bird that we did not eat, because it was, I mean, that's literally like not a thing. Like, if you take the life of an animal, you use it. So I don't understand this idea of like pro Second Amendment, but anti-vax.
Yeah,
Like,
no, it definitely doesn't make sense. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance, because people will say something in the same sentence that contradict each other, and it's very obvious if you're not in it, but they just don't see it. But we are getting past time. So Kelly, as we always are past time. Kelly, thank you for being here with us. Is there any final words that you'd like to say to the people?
Absolutely. All of this wraps up into my bring home message every single day on TikTok. Run for office. So much of this is political because we have let extremists become in control of our politics. Run for office. You're qualified to run for office. We need good-hearted, kind, decent people who are willing to learn, willing to change, willing to have hard conversations to run for office. Please run for office. That's my message. Thank you for having me.
Heard it loud and clear. If I ever run for office, I'm going to call you and get tips.
Please do. Please.
The next time I run for office, I'm calling you. I may have texted Kelly at one point about some things.
Also, anyway, Kelly, tell us where people can find you.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yes, please. This is my TikTok handle, Kelly Ross Krout. I'm Kelly for Arkansas on all of the things. I'll run for office again. I may have an announcement coming up here pretty soon. Stay tuned. It's going to be fun. So I enjoy the Twitters as well. That's a good time.
You don't want to. You don't want to.
I'm not going to do it right now, Jeremy. I'm not going to do it, but
okay. All right, just checking, Kelly. Just checking. I just wanted to be a part of the breaking news media. Yeah.
I'll come back. You gotta have to have me back. Okay?
Well, that's a good cliffhanger. A reason for people to go follow Kelly.
Right.
And,
great reason to go follow Kelly. Potential maybe announcement coming down the road. And Kelly, we would love to have you back, especially after that. And that you have, even though we're not in your state or in your district or whatever might potentially be happening. But even though we're not in those places, we would absolutely 100% be supportive of you. And I know the Evangelicalish fam would be supportive of you because we love your content, we love your heart, and we're super grateful for you.
Thanks, guys.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, that will wrap us up. Quick little tidbits. Next week will be our last episode of the season, and then we'll take a break. So join next week.
Is that the end of season 3, April?
Yeah, next week's the end of season 3.
Golly.
We've been pumping out some episodes.
It's actually like a child.
I know. And also, so we also have a Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram at Evangelicalish. Obviously, we're on TikTok at Evangelicalish, and we have a private Facebook group now.
Yes.
And I feel like a proud mama with all the conversations that are going on in there. So if you want to join our private Facebook group, just to keep the conversation going, ask any questions. It's a safe place to have doubts, to talk about faith, all of the things. Just request it, and as long as you're not insane, we'll probably let you in.
Christian book on Facebook.
Yeah,
group on Facebook.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great place to. If you see crazy Christian things posted on Facebook, post them in there. Give me the screenshots, and I will blast them on TikTok. I will cover their names. I always do. So fun times. Anyway,
I weigh back and forth about what names I cover and which names I don't. When I pull things from other platforms, because sometimes I'm like, you so crazy, you need some Jesus from my followers. And my followers do what my followers do. I mean, they are really good at their job.
No, it is true. It's nice having a little army to just go out
so nice
after people with the love of Jesus, that little passive aggressive love that they always give to us.
Just love. It's just love. You were wrong, and this is love. Yeah.
The Facebook name is Evangelicalish Podcast Group. Is what someone asked. All right, guys. We will see you guys next week, and in the meantime, love God and love people passionately. And thanks again, Kelly, for being here.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys later. Bye.